Hello everyone, it's History Behind the Warrior, and of course, welcome back to yet another Mortal Kombat video on the channel. Now, coming off the cusp of the most recent Mortal Kombat 2 trailer reveal, which expanded on some scenes in the prior trailer, as well as sneakily hide some interesting bits and pieces just beneath its surface. Today, I will be breaking down the new trailer, analysing everything you missed, and somewhat painting a timeline of events that have led up into this tournament, creating a more cohesive narrative of what's been laid out here. So for the purposes of streamlining this video, we will be going through this trailer scene by scene, and connecting the dots with both the prior trailer, as well as scenes that do occur a little bit later on. So we will be jumping around quite a bit, but it's the best way of kind of painting this picture. So right out the gate, the trailer itself starts at a con of sorts. Comic-Con if I am to presume. Now here of course, we are once again reintroduced to Karl Urban's Johnny Cage, a much older depiction of the character than we've previously seen, as he seems to be a dying star, with no one attending his panel and looking quite envious at a bunch of social media influencers. Now if we are to tie into the prior trailer, I believe it's this hard crash and realization that causes Johnny to actually go to the bar, drinking his sorrows away, before then ultimately being confronted by Raiden, hence why he's still holding like a bunch of his merch as he's putting it away. It is possible that the Comic-Con scene does take place prior to this, but it just makes sense why he'd be drinking his sorrows away. That is, unless this is a second act low point. Now, following this, we do actually get a cut to Edenia, something that does exist in the past, as we do get another shot of this a bit later on, where it's clearly been merged with Outworld. And the trailer here actually does a really good job of putting some eyes on the Fall of Edenia. Because here's the thing, right? When it comes down to the Fall of Edenia, these are typically events that you hear more of than you ever see. So this is one of the very few times it's actually been tackled in live action. I believe with the last time it actually being approached being Mortal Kombat Legacy. And it seems like when we're first introduced to Edenia, it's blossoming in a sort of golden age despite the fact it's locked in Mortal Kombat. And here, we do actually get to see King Jared interact with a very young Kitana, clearly trying to comfort her despite the dire circumstances. And from this point onwards in the trailer, we do actually get some really nice shots of King Jared here before his fight with Shao Kahn, as he does seem to be beloved by his people, with them cheering him on during their last stand. Yet of course, we all do know how this fight does go, as once Shao Kahn is introduced, the tone dramatically shifts. For the fight that we do see between Jared and Shao Kahn seems extremely one-sided, being manhandled and eventually skewered by the Emperor, and with the death of Jared marks an end for the Age of Edenia, cutting to a young Kitana and Sindel, watching as the skies of Edenia are eclipsed by the clouds of Outworld. So it's kind of implied that we do witness the merging of realms here, with this largely concluding the Edenian scenes of the movie. So considering the nature of things, and the fact that they're clearly setting up Kitana, it's quite safe to assume that this is more than likely the first 10 to 20 minutes of the movie. A bold assumption on my part, but definitely something I want to point out here, as we do see her a considerable bit throughout the trailer. Now, our next scene here actually seems to cut to what looks to be the Shirai Ryu Fire Gardens, or at the very least, the guise of the Shirai Ryu Fire Gardens, with us seeing Hanzo walk through an Elysium of sorts, for reasons that are yet to be explained. It seems like in the afterlife, the Spectre may be put in a trance of sorts to appease the idea of him having avenged his family, something we did of course see in the prior movie. But as we do see a little bit later on in the trailer, when confronted by Kano and Johnny, said Elysium and illusion does decay, with Hanzo switching from his traditional garb into that of his Spectre costume, where we do see that yes, he still does reside in the Netherrealm, and along with this, he seems quite displeased of the trance he's been put in, grabbing his kunai, which presumably ties into the larger fight sequences with Noob Saibot that we did see in the prior trailer here. And we do get a few more new shots here, where he can be seen fighting Noob Saibot alongside Kano and Johnny. Again, details are scarce right now, but considering the absence of Cole throughout this entire trailer, as he only features in one temple training sequence alongside Jax and Liu Kang, I believe it's quite safe to assume that he may be killed off relatively early on. But to wrap up the Netherrealm scenes that we do have here, we do have a shot where a trio are seemingly walking into the heart of the Netherrealm. And if I am to guess from what we've talked about here, it's safe to assume that that must be Johnny, Kano, and Hanzo, with Hanzo himself acting as a guide of sorts. As to where and for what reason, we don't know, but he seems to be acting as their sort of Kairon and Guardian throughout the Hells, which is what I presume has them cross paths with Noob Saibot. From here, we get another fight sequence with the Wraith, and one that did catch me by surprise here is Jade and Kano combining forces to presumably attack Noob Saibot. As for why Jade is here, that is a question in itself, for the movie has kind of portrayed her as a very loyal zealot to that of Shao Kahn. So the reason behind her presence here does raise a question in itself. And our final shot here in the Netherrealm is Hanzo Hasashi breathing out hellfire, which could very well be a fatality considering how he ended Bihan in the last movie. We don't know who he's exactly spraying it at, as the framing of this shot kind of hides that, but still, something I did want to point out here. Now, our next shot in the trailer here is us cutting back to Raiden's temple, and this of course is where the Earthrealmers seem to be stationed, a place that kinda keeps them out the clutches of Outworld, at least for a while. We'll touch on an important scene later. Now here, of course, we do see them train, but it's also the place where they do introduce Johnny Cage to the idea of the Mortal Kombat tournament. A place where, well, he naturally freaks out, as a literal thunder god teleported him to the middle of nowhere. Hence why he's asking to be sent back, probably crumbling at the pressure of the current situation, and that, well, death is indeed a possibility here. Now it does seem like later on as the tournament unfolds, they would be infiltrated by the likes of Shang Tsung, who from what we can tell in the trailer, does go one-on-one with Raiden, as we get a nice shot of the two confronting each other, and Raiden himself performing his infamous Superman fly. But my biggest takeaway here is actually what happens to Raiden. I failed to mention it in my previous breakdown video, but once it was brought to my attention, it does make a lot of sense here. You see, it's believed that during this fight, the Thunder God does have his throat slit, but killing a god is never quite an easy endeavor in Mortal Kombat, and even then Raiden himself has come back from death. So, with us having prior knowledge of knowing that Quan Chi is in this movie, we clearly see during this conflict between Raiden and Shang Tsung that the sorcerer himself has Shinnok's amulet, which in turn sets up a whole nother different plethora of events for like a third movie. But let's not get ahead of ourselves just yet, because it looks like through this throat slit and his utilization of the amulet, Shang is able to seal away the godly essence of the Thunder God, not fully killing him, as we do see his body heal in the prior trailer. But I believe that by having Raiden sealed away, it's what ultimately sets up our heroes for their venture into the Netherrealm. That makes sense in my mind. That would be the purpose as to why they're there, as ownership of the amulet lies with that of Quan Chi, someone who also resides in the Netherrealm. Thus, it would make sense why Scorpion is involved in some capacity, as Raiden was responsible for saving his bloodline, so he probably feels in debt to that of the Thunder God. Plus, it also directly explains why Scorpion would be fighting Noob Saibot, for Bihan would be ultimately acting as Quan Chi's bodyguard. It's a conflict of interests in that manner. And the reason I do also say it's Raiden's godly essence is one, he's not bleeding everywhere, and it seems to be sucking the energy out of him. I think they even give us a shot here of his powers returning to him, for there is a massive thunder strike that does hit the Sky Temple. This is quite an ambitious assumption, but I feel makes a lot of sense for characters to be where they are. Now, as we progress a little bit deeper into the trailer, we do have another shot of Adeline Rudolph's katana, presumably a little bit of a prelude to her training and fight sequence with Jade from the previous trailer. In fact, we do have a new shot of it here, which is really cool. And then we cut to the charred body of Bihan. And considering he's still in his human form, this must be just prior to his resurrection as Noob Saibot, as the terrain behind him is also a fiery hellscape. And talking of resurrection here, I do believe that we finally get our first shot of Quan Chi here, acting as a shadowy, ominous figure that is actually in the process of resurrecting Kung Lao. of course later leading to his fight and conflict with that of Liu Kang. So it looks like beyond the Wraiths and the Spectres, but we are having Revenant depictions of characters here. Because outside of him bringing back these two, we also see the return of Kano alongside Kitana and Jade. But most importantly, our first actual glimpse at Quan Chi properly here, for he can be seen bringing the criminal back to life. As for why Kano turns against them, we don't quite know, but considering the throat slit on Raiden, it wouldn't surprise me if the Black Dragon Clan leader was playing both sides to his advantage. From here, we have another shot of Raiden, one that I believe was utilized in the prior trailer, the recruitment of Johnny Cage, and then we get a little bit of a redo of the fight sequence between Johnny and Kitana once more. Except it's kind of expanded upon this time, with Johnny quite hesitant to punch the princess, with her showing absolutely no remorse for the actor. And we do also get to see the new weird katana mask in action here, functioning as a mouth and face guard in the same vein as that of Optimus Prime. It's a really interesting and different take on the traditional like cloth masks we've seen before. Either way, during this fight, it does look like Kitana is coming out on top. So whilst I don't believe they will be killing Johnny here, as he's far too integral of a character, especially with the shift from Cole Young, considering her following appearances later down the line in the trailer, I believe it's quite safe to assume that she does come out on top here. Our next shot here in this trailer is during an absolutely beautiful sequence that is set in the portal stage between a Revenant's Kung Lao and Liu Kang, with the two friends battling each other, holding nothing back. And during this sequence, we do see Kung Lao utilize the teleportation with his hat, and later even utilizing it as a projectile. And then of course on Liu Kang's side, he's using Dragon's Fire in order to stop Kung Lao. Whilst this battle in itself is incredibly back and forth, we do know from the trailers that Liu Kang is destined to fight Shao Kahn. We do have the appearance of Jade, who is battling against Jax here. Little context is kind of given, but I do assume it's just another sequence during the tournament. Now again, we do get some more shots that I have talked about a bit, but we finally get the confrontation between Johnny Cage and Baraka here. And I will say, Baraka definitely looks a lot better than the prior trailer. Yeah, he does look a bit CGI monstery, but it's definitely an improvement over what we saw. There seems to be a lot more elbow grease and polish on the overall appearance. So as seen in the prior trailer, these two are expected to fight, with Liu Kang joking that he does expect Johnny Cage to die in this fight. And it's probably what I presume is Johnny Cage's first fight in the tournament as a whole, hence why he's so nervous about it. Now a really cool and very intriguing shot is us jumping to the inside of Shao Kahn's throne room, the same throne room that we do see during the Young Kitana sequence. Of course, Shao is Emperor and King here, with Sindel by his side. And what's interesting during this sequence is that Kitana is on her knees in front of her stepfather, whereas Jade is standing up above her. And the reason why this is important is because this maybe implies that she tried to get away from the Emperor, or is in some capacity being punished by him. So she hasn't yet strayed from his side, but this probably implies a bit of a rebellious streak in Kitana, showing that she does defy her father's will. And following this sequence, we do actually get a really cool shot of Shao Kahn here. I can't really tell where this takes place, but if I'm going to judge by what I'm seeing in the background, I'm going to assume that it's more than likely his throne, or at the very least somewhere else in Outworld before he conquered Edenia. It's kind of hard to say from the shots here. Following this, we get a slight expansion on the scene and fight between Sindel and Sonya, where it does look like the Empress is gaining the upper hand against Blade, with her sonic scream pushing back the energy rings. And then we have a sort of escalation of events, where Kitana is rallying both the people of Edenia and Outworld. I presume that she's learned of her true heritage, as well as the fall of Edenia, which is why she's finally turned against the Emperor. Hence why later on in the trailer, we do see her using her fans as a buzzsaw against the Emperor, setting up the final conflict in itself, where it's implied that she's also joined by Liu Kang. Also, worth pointing out, this entire final fight sequence does seem to take place in the same arena where Jared died. So everything kind of comes full circle. So with that in mind, it is safe to assume that the fight between Liu Kang and Shao Kahn does end in a stalemate of sorts. I believe reveals that this sequence does take place in the throne room, as Liu Kang is like trying to burn off his face. Now going back to the trailer in itself, we do see Sonya and Liu Kang sneaking away to unknown terrain, and seeing as these two are together, I'm going to presume that this does lead into the Liu Kang fight against Shao, and Sindel fight against Sonya. So in the midst of the tournaments, the two do stray away, and wind up getting into conflict outside of the tournament itself, which in turn makes sense why both Shao and Liu Kang survived their first conflict here. It wasn't an official tournament match. After this point, we do get some more shots of characters, such as Jade in the Netherrealm, Jax optimistically happy about beating the piss out of someone, Kano and Johnny against the Cybot clone, and a really cool sequence here, where Shao is battling Liu Kang and Sonya. And judging by how dark the terrain is, I believe that this is during the climax of the film. Now for the most part, this does largely cover everything I could find in the trailer. Whilst there is some voiceover that indicates the rules of the tournament and how Johnny sees his own self-worth, I believe that these are already established things that the trailer is able to tell through its visuals. So good job on that front, but it is kind of interesting how this movie seems to be laid out. Now just a heads up, I'm well aware that this movie has had quite a few test screenings, and plot details have been kind of like leaked, but from what I'm aware is that there's been like a number of different reshoots from 2024 onwards, which has vastly changed and altered a lot of those leaks that we've heard previously. So ultimately, we won't be able to know what's real and not real until like the movie does come out. But even then, I will say I'm quite excited for this movie. Whilst I didn't hate the 2021 movie, it definitely failed in being a Mortal Kombat movie, which was arguably like my biggest gripe with that movie. It failed to embrace its source material, and instead it did its best to try and have it become its own thing. But here though, it definitely feels like there's a step in the right direction. It feels like it's being handled with a lot more care and attention, and I do like that. It's just ultimately, it has incredibly big and very ambitious shoes to fill that I am worried about. Especially with the A plot being Outworld and the B plots handling the Netherrealm. Especially with Shinnok's amulet in play here. That implies a lot and is a really big thing to introduce. So I definitely hope that this isn't a case of them setting up the next movie, which in turn could detract from the tournament, which had an entire movie in itself kind of building up into it. There's a lot happening here, and I just do hope it's done well. So with that said and everything covered here, I now relay the question to all of you of what are your thoughts on this movie and this trailer as a whole? Do you like the design decisions and approach they're currently having? And was there anything in the trailer that you managed to pick up on that I did miss here? Please do comment down below, as I'd love to hear what you have to say. But until the next one guys, that has been it for me. I do hope you have enjoyed this video, and if you made it this far, please give this video a thumbs up and try out the new hype mechanic. It's a small thing, but it goes a tremendously long way in supporting my content. Anyway, until the next one everyone, take care and stay safe.